Okay, so are you ready to dive into the future?
Always. What are we diving into this time?
Well, get this.
Sure.
We're tackling AI in education.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge, right? And a little while ago, you sent over this research article about it, and it got me thinking, like,
Yeah.
what does it even mean, AI in the classroom? Like, are we talking robot teachers?
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's easy to jump to those sci-fi images, but
It's so much bigger than that, right?
way bigger. This article, it really digs into the nitty-gritty, the ethical stuff, which we got to figure out now.
And you know me, always thinking about the ethics.
Yeah.
But before we get all serious,
Yeah, let's set the stage.
exactly. Because some people listening might be thinking, AI teachers, that's nuts. But think about it. We already have these personalized learning apps, right? The ones that adjust to a student's pace.
Right, like if you're breezing through, it'll level up the challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you're stuck, it gives you extra practice.
So in a way, isn't that already a form of AI at work?
Yeah, totally. And then there are those intelligent tutoring systems, the ones that can pinpoint exactly where a student's struggling. Like, okay, you're missing this one key concept. Let's work on that. It's like having a personal tutor for every student.
Which sounds amazing in theory. But the article doesn't shy away from the potential downsides either.
Oh, no, it does not.
Yeah.
It's like looking at both sides of the coin. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was this idea that, well, AI could actually make inequality worse if we're not super careful.
Yeah, that's a biggie. It's all about the data, right?
The data. Always the data. Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine an AI system designed to personalize learning paths, right? Sounds amazing. But what if, and this is a big what if the data it's trained on, the stuff it uses to make decisions, what if that data already has bias baked into it?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Hmm.
So, like, if the AI is trained on data that says, okay, boys tend to do better in math, then it might start subtly steering girls away from STEM fields.
Exactly, even if that's not the intention at all. And that's just one example. We could end up perpetuating all sorts of biases without even realizing it.
We'd be building digital walls instead of, digital bridges.
Exactly. And that's why this article is so important, because it lays out these ethical principles to guide us. Like, how do we make sure this technology lives up to its potential without.
Creating a whole bunch of new problems.
Right. Okay, so spill the tea. What are these magical ethical principles?
Well, they're not exactly magical, but they are important. They're kind of like guidelines, and the authors cleverly group them. There are 7 in total, but
7. We might need a bigger whiteboard for this one.
we might, but it's actually well organized. They start with these big picture principles, governance and stewardship.
Yes.
I know, they sound a bit formal.
Like they belong in some dusty old textbook.
Totally. But trust me, they're crucial. Okay, so governance, right? Think of
Yeah.
it like, who gets to make the rules about how AI is used in education? Is it the tech companies? Is it the government? Is it educators? Right, because we don't want some tech CEO somewhere deciding the future of learning, right?
Exactly. And even if it's well-intentioned, like even if you've got a bunch of really smart people in Silicon Valley, they're not necessarily the ones on the ground in classrooms every day.
So we need to make sure those decisions are made, like democratically,
Mm-hmm.
representing, diverse voices.
100%. We need teachers, parents, students even, all at the table having a say in how this technology is used.
And that's where stewardship comes in, right?
Exactly. So you've got the rules, but then who's making sure everyone's playing by the rules?
Okay, I like that. So governance is like making the laws, and stewardship is like, I don't know, the school principal making sure everyone's following the rules and nobody's pulling any pranks in the hallways.
That's a great analogy. Stewardship is about making sure those big picture principles are actually put into action. We don't want this to just be like a nice idea that looks good on paper. We need it to translate into real positive changes in classrooms.
Changes that benefit everyone, right? Okay, so we've got the big picture, making the rules, making sure those rules are followed. What's next?
Well, now it starts to get really interesting because we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of how this actually plays out in the classroom. Because it's not enough to just slap some AI into a school and hope for the best.
Right, it's not about replacing teachers with robots or anything like that.
Definitely not. In fact, the next principle is all about empowering those human educators. It's called human oversight.
Okay, I like the sound of that. Human oversight. Tell me more.
So imagine you go to the doctor, right? You wouldn't want a robot performing surgery on you, would you?
I'm going to go with a hard no on that one. I like my surgeons with a pulse, thank you very much.
Exactly. But you might be okay with a robot, handing the surgeon instruments or something, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Keep those robot hands away from the vital organs.
Right. So it's the same idea with AI in education. We want it to be a tool that helps teachers, not replaces them. Like imagine AI grading those endless stacks of papers or, analyzing student data to figure out which kids need extra help.
That would free up teachers to actually teach, to spend more time with their students, get to know them, figure out their learning styles.
Precisely, because at the end of the day, teaching is about human connection. It's about inspiring a love of learning,
Yeah.
and we can't automate that.
Okay, I am all about keeping that human touch in education. This isn't some dystopian sci-fi movie. But speaking of movies, remember that scene in The Matrix where they're all plugged into that crazy computer program
Yeah.
and they're learning kung fu in like 2 seconds?
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. You're not suggesting we all get plugged into the Matrix, are you?
No, 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 definitely not. But wouldn't it be cool if learning could be that personalized and engaging? Like, what if we could use AI to tailor lessons to each student's unique learning style?
See, now you're talking. And that actually ties into another principle, learner agency.
Learner agency. Okay, break that down for me.
Basically, it means giving students more control over their own learning. Like instead of just passively absorbing information, they're actively involved in shaping their education.
So less like, okay, kids, today we're learning about the Pythagorean theorem, and more like, hey, have you ever wondered how architects use math to design buildings? Let's explore that.
Exactly. It's about sparking curiosity, giving students choices, and letting them explore different paths.
That's how you make learning fun. Because let's be honest, how many of us actually remember everything we learned in high school? But if something really sparked our interest,
You remember it, right? And you probably went out and learned even more about it on your own.
totally. But of course, we want to make sure every student has the same opportunities,
Yeah.
right? And that's where things can get tricky. Like, what about students with disabilities? Or students who are still learning English? Can AI really be inclusive?
That's a really important point, and it brings us to another one of those core ethical principles, inclusivity.
Okay, inclusivity in AI. What does that look like in the classroom?
So imagine an AI system that can adjust the reading level of a text,
Hmm.
right? Or provide real-time translations, or even just present information in different ways, like visually or auditorily, depending on a student's learning style.
That's amazing. So it's about making sure that technology is accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or their ability.
Exactly. It's about making sure technology helps to bridge those gaps instead of widening them.
Okay, I'm digging this.
Yeah.
Inclusive AI, human oversight, learner agency. These are all fantastic. What else we got?
Well, there are a couple more principles that tie into all of this, and they have to do with, well, how we actually design and build these AI systems in the first place.
Right, because if we're not careful, we could end up with AI
Yeah.
that's, well, let's just say not very human-friendly.
And that's where the principle of human-centered design comes in.
Exactly, and it's not just about making the tech user-friendly, although that's important too, right? It's about making sure that every step of the way, from the initial idea to the actual coding and development, that we're thinking about the human impact.
Okay, so like instead of just saying, hey, let's build the coolest AI imaginable, we're asking questions like,
How will this actually be used in a classroom? Will it help students learn and grow? Will it make teachers' lives easier? Or will it, like, create more problems than it solves?
right, because the last thing we want is AI. That's all. Well, I was going to say bells and whistles, but that seems a bit outdated.
A little bit. How about all algorithms and no heart?
Ooh, I like that. All algorithms and no heart. Okay, so we've got human-centered design. What's next on our list of ethical must-haves?
This one is huge, and it's something we've touched on a bit already, data privacy.
Ah, yes, the data. It's like the fuel that powers all this amazing AI, but it's also, that can be a bit of a minefield if we're not careful. Totally. And we're not talking about like what kind of pizza you ordered on Friday night. We're talking about student data.
Right. Which is, let's be honest, way more valuable than my pizza preferences.
Mm.
I mean, we're talking about kids' academic records, their learning styles, their strengths, their weaknesses. This stuff is sensitive.
Incredibly sensitive. And with AI, we have the potential to collect and analyze this data on a scale we've never seen before, which is amazing, right? Like, imagine the insights we could gain, the ways we could personalize learning, but it also means we need really, really strong safeguards in place.
Because the last thing we want is for this data to fall into the wrong hands.
Exactly. Imagine a kid's learning data being used to, like, manipulate them with targeted ads. Or, even worse, to discriminate against them later in life.
Oh, that's just wrong. Like,
Huh.
sorry, our AI says you weren't very good at fractions in the third grade, so we can't offer you this job. Not cool.
Not cool at all. And that's why this article really stresses the need for things like transparency and accountability when it comes to data.
Okay, transparency and accountability. I'm sensing a theme here. So what does that look like in practice?
So, for starters, students and parents should always know what data is being collected, how it's being used, and who has access to it. No more burying this stuff in those endless terms of service agreements that nobody reads.
Seriously, those things are like the digital equivalent of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Totally. We need clear, easy to understand language, maybe even visuals, to explain this stuff to students and families.
And accountability. What does that look like when it comes to data?
So, this means having clear guidelines and regulations in place for how this data can be used. And crucially, it means having consequences if those guidelines are broken.
Like, if a company mishandles student data or uses it for something shady, there need to be real repercussions, right?
Absolutely. We need to take this seriously because once that data is out there,
It's out there,
Hmm.
and it's tough to get it back, right?
Exactly. And that's why this whole conversation about AI and education, it's not just some abstract thing. This is about real kids, real families, real futures.
It's about making sure technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
100%. And I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
I agree. We've covered a ton of ground, from robot teachers to data privacy and everything in between. But most importantly, we've really highlighted how crucial those ethical considerations are as we navigate this exciting but also pretty daunting new world of AI in education. So to our amazing listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of learning. Remember, the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we create. And by being informed, engaged, and yes, a little bit cautious, we can help ensure that AI in education lives up to its potential and empowers every student to succeed.